G'day and welcome into the Kiwi Football Fix. You know what this show does. We shine a spotlight on all things New Zealand football at home, New Zealand footballers abroad. That's actually where we go right here, right now. We're trying to track down, I'm calling her Carmen Sandiego because it's kind of like, where in the world is she? Hannah Wilkinson, almost a century of caps for the Football Ferns. Are you in Portugal? Are you in New Zealand? Are you in Sweden? Do I find you in Germany, Hannah?
Yes, I've landed in Germany after a lot of travels.
Yeah, so talk me through the last 12 months of your life. You've been here, there and everywhere, and obviously COVID has wreaked havoc in your professional life.
Yeah, so the last sort of consistent place I was at was Portugal, and that was early last year, and then the pandemic rumbled in and disrupted that. So I ended up at home in the lockdown, struggling to get some football in. And then I found myself back over in Europe, in Sweden, in Stockholm, and finished my 6 months up there, and then now here I've landed in Germany. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, people will think that you're slightly crazy going from New Zealand, where we were in lockdown and you probably couldn't get out much and you couldn't train, then all of a sudden you put yourself in Sweden, where, correct me if I'm wrong, I've got a funny feeling that they didn't really adhere to any COVID protocols whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right about that. It was very, very different going from New Zealand to Sweden, of course, and it was really strange. And I spent like a period like kind of forgetting that there was a pandemic going on because it was just so unrestricted, and I had to be kind of mindful just to be careful. But yeah, it was pretty bizarre.
So when you remembered that there was a global pandemic undertaking, what sort of measures did you put in place for yourself? Were you wearing a mask at those times? Were you trying to stay out of bars and restaurants, cafes? What were you up to?
I think initially it was fine. I felt okay because it was like still summer, and so I could be more outside and biking to training and not using the subway so much, close contact with a lot of people. In fact, the subway ended up being the better way to go at that time because most people were outside because it was nice weather. But yeah, I just was really obsessed with hand sanitizing. Like I didn't do anything without like sanitizing my hands or so it's good to be paranoid in those situations. And I think I was for most of the time, but it was hard because it was a culture where there was no pandemic there. And I think it's still kind of like that now.
Yeah. And if Sweden was anything like New Zealand, I'm sure hand sanitizer was at short supply. Everybody was trying to get their hands on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you went to Sweden on the back of how much training, how much game time back here in New Zealand, because we were in lockdown, which would have made it very difficult for you to actually get out on a field and kick a football.
Yeah, it definitely made things quite hard. Thankfully, I had a local gym in Whangarei. I was able to rent some like gym equipment to use outside, like some CrossFit stuff, and then I had, just a mountain nearby that I could run up and down. So I kind of treated it like an off-season period just to stay fit, but I did not get much football training. I trained with Northland men for like a couple of weeks right before I left, but that was about it. It was really not much at all. So it was really tough going from that to like full on, like in the middle of the season, playing in Sweden. So it made things quite difficult.
Yeah, so what kind of state were you in? Obviously not at the peak of your powers. How did that, that lack of form translate on the pitch?
Yeah, I wasn't so bad, in terms of fitness because I had been keeping fit, but, I wouldn't call myself like match fit, there's a difference between being like fit and then match fit. I certainly wasn't match fit. And it was also summer there, and so I had to adjust to some weather. And it was just really difficult. We were straight in the middle of the season. I was thrown into some games, maybe like 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and but the coach kind of, like, he had his starting team in his head, and once, it's really hard to break into like a set starting 11 like that, and it was a really hard time, and I ended up not playing much at all.
How did you cope with that? Because that must be quite devastating. You've gone half the world away from New Zealand to play football, and then you're not actually getting the opportunity. How did you cope?
I just kind of I had in my mind, there are things that you just can't control, and this is just one of them, and this is the nature of the professional game. Like it can be very unforgiving like that. And yeah, I guess I felt that I'd never really got my chance to prove myself properly out there, and it can be tough out there with coaches like that. So I learned a lot, and I still really enjoyed it. Like, I love the club and I love the teammates. Like, I've made some really good friends and stuff, so it wasn't all bad, but I am definitely like grateful to be out of there now. Yeah,
well, fast forward to present day and you find yourself in Germany, MSV Duisburg. I hope I've pronounced the name correctly. I'm sure you'll give me the advice if I haven't. How did that all come about? Because it's only a recent thing, and you've signed up with the club for, the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, so I've been here. It was actually kind of a stressful situation. I was kind of spending the Christmas period not knowing where I was going to go, because it was tough to find a team for like a non-European like me that, can be expensive for a lot of teams. So I was actually playing quite a waiting game, and I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to find a club. But like, thankfully, a club that took me in, it's in one of the best leagues in the world. So I've been here 3 weeks. It's cold. So we're in the middle of a very dark European winter. And so far, like, the training has just been a huge step up, especially like physical, running, strength. Like, these Germans don't fool around. Like, it is tough. Right. But it's good, because I need this kind of challenge. So.
Well, I suppose that you bring up an interesting point. So from league to league to league, there are going to be different styles, aren't there? So in Portugal, I'm assuming it was more technical, a lot of fast feet, and now you've gone to Germany where it's quite physical and people aren't afraid to put the boot in.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was just talking to my teammate about that. I was thinking, like, this is the exact opposite of Portugal. I've been to there's so many different types of leagues, and this is like, they want you fit, they want you very athletic, and thankfully that's something that like kind of got me into the kind of national team anyway. Like, I always have been a very fit and athletic person, so it's good for me to be doing this, and I also I really appreciate the challenge.
Your club is, it's actually got a Kiwi connection of sorts, doesn't it? Because a couple of your Football Ferns teammates, Michaela Moore, Emma Ralston, they have played at this club. Did you talk to them about their experiences, and did that drive you towards this place?
Yeah, I spoke with Michaela Moore, like, a little bit about this club, and she, she found it quite a challenge as well, and there was a good league. So she was like, it's good. It's going to be good for you. So, it was good to hear her like insights on that. Yeah, it certainly is a step up. Like, you can't slack at all. Like, it's very, very intense. But I kind of like that, because it has been a bit different from my last experiences. I feel like I really need to be pushed now. So I think it's a good thing.
I want to read you this quote from Emma Ralston. I don't know when she said it, but it must have been recently. It's easy to stay focused on football here because there's nothing to do. That's not exactly a glowing reference of Duisburg. Have you had an opportunity to get out and about? I know that lockdown probably prohibits you venturing out too often, but what kind of place is this that you've stumbled upon?
Well, if you put a pandemic on top of that quote, you can definitely multiply it by 1,000, because it really is not much going on here at all. So
what kind of place is it? Like, what are you expecting when lockdown lifts and you can go outside? Where are the places that you're just desperate to see?
Well, it's close. I mean, the town itself, there really isn't much. It's in like an industrial town, not really anything going on. But it is close to Düsseldorf, so that's a place that I would love to visit, pandemic or not, I would love to see the city a little bit. So hopefully I'll get myself out there at some point.
It's a good reason to just focus on football and football alone. And I guess that's something that you're really going to have to do, because you join a team at the foot of the ladder. I think in 12 games played, they're yet to win a match. What kind of challenge does that light in you? You know, you've got the opportunity to really make a change in this team.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to come into this kind of position. But at the same time, it's like, there's nothing really to lose at this point. So that's always a good thing to think about. But it's going to be really, really hard. And I just want to be able to get out there and play and form like relationships with the girls on the team as much as I can, like on the field. So that I can make as best of a difference as I can. Like it is going to be tough, but it's a good challenge, like I said.
When are you playing next? I mean, there's been the pandemic, a break over Christmas and New Year. Weather conditions are also playing their part. Do you have any idea when your first and next game is? So the next game hopefully will be what was supposed to be our first game against Frankfurt, the 28th of February, hopefully. But that's after, so we've still got a FIFA window to get through, and so plenty of time to keep fit and keep the strength up and keep the training going. But it's fine. I'm looking forward to it. Good. Speaking of playing throughout 2021, you must be excited / nervous for what will or will not happen with the Olympics. Everybody's holding their breath. Fingers crossed this thing goes ahead. And how good would it be to pull on the Football Ferns jersey again in Tokyo?
Oh man, that's exactly why I've, playing for New Zealand is like kind of my main drive for why I play professionally. Like that's the number one goal for me. I love playing for New Zealand, especially at that, World Cup and Olympic level. There's nothing else like it. So I really, really hope these games go ahead. Who knows? But I'm certainly preparing like they will, and I really cannot wait to wear that fern again. Yeah,
and to really ramp up the passion that you have for playing for the Ferns and representing the country. Next World Cup in 2 years' time, it's on New Zealand shores. That must really excite you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I'm still like buzzing over the moment that we found out about that. So, what a thing to work towards. What a thing to have, like in your mind for the future, just to set, all your goals towards. Like it's going to be absolutely amazing.
You must remember the 17s World Cup that was here in New Zealand all those years ago. What was it like at that time, and watching the groundswell of support? It really surged during that time, and what it might do in 2 years' time again.
Oh, it was so cool. It was so inspiring, particularly for me when I was, I was at the age at that point where I was still working to make a national team. And to see that happen, like in New Zealand, and just the passion for the global game, and then the crowds and the excitement around it was amazing. So you can only and women's football in New Zealand has only grown since then. So, it's going to be pretty special.
At that World Cup in 2 years' time, how important is it for you personally to really give a good and decent account of yourself, given what happened at the last World Cup? You went in on the back of a number of serious injuries, and maybe you would say that you're slightly underdone. So the importance of being fit and ready and available in 2 years' time, it must be, it's right at the top of the tree for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My injuries have certainly plagued my performances and my career, but that is the nature of professional sport. So it's part of it, and so I am still fighting my way back to my peak performance. But we've got plenty of events to look forward to and work towards. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm over here in one of the best leagues in the world to try and work myself and get myself back to that level.
Well, I hope you really can do that. We want to see the best Hannah Wilkinson playing for the Football Ferns whenever we get the chance to see the team take to the field again. Look, I kind of want to go sideways if I can. I want to read you another quote. This time it's not from Emma Ralston. It's from somebody you know pretty well. Being openly gay doesn't make you any less of an athlete or any less of a human. So don't ever try to be someone you're not. Don't be afraid to be comfortable in your own skin, and don't try to conform for the benefit of others. Be yourself no matter what. Now, that was written in an article by your good self several years ago that appeared on a website. So I think it's really important that we talk about things like this, especially now that it's Pride Month, where we're shining a light on all things same-sex relationship and all that. So, Hannah, tell me, when did you feel 100% comfortable in your own skin?
Oh, I think the moment that I came out and was open about my sexuality with like my family and my close friends because of their response. I think the whole time you're very, very concerned about what people think of you, especially those close to you, when you're, so conditioned into such like a heteronormative existence for such a long period of time. And so I think I became pretty comfortable once I realized that, it is fine. So, I mean, I was lucky enough to have a fantastic support system. And yeah, I think it is important not to hide and just be yourself.
How tough was it for you to take that first step and say to someone, anyone, I'm gay?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying because, like I said, you're always going to think there's something wrong with you because it's not normal, or that's what you think for a long, long, long time. And I think now, lately, we're in 2021 now, and it's, the world has become a lot more accepting, and there are more and more people showing and normalizing all kinds of sexualities and gender identities. So I think that's exactly what helps. It's just normalizing it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. I ripped that fantastic quote from yourself out of the website Out for the Win, for which you are an ambassador. How important is it to you to play that role for other people who may be not so comfortable in their own skin, but thinking about being honest and open?
Yeah, I think it's great to have a platform like I do and to be able to spread that awareness. I think it's really, really important that people with a voice can normalize the diversity of sexual orientation and gender identity and just being who you are. It's really important. And I'm glad that I could be a part of, things like Out for the Win, particularly in sport. And I think we need to, encourage the male side of sport to certainly do the same.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you think we're doing as a society, and how is football doing when it comes to this, like being inclusive? Are we getting better as the years go by?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely improving for sure. But there's always going to be discrimination and homophobia all the time. And like I said, it's important to have conversations and to keep normalizing things. And I think the side that really needs to start having these conversations and being really frank and open, especially involving straight allies as much as possible, is the men's side of sports, because that's the area I think that's lagging the most, for sure. Like the women's side is it's almost, it's a lot more accepting, I think.
Why do you think that the men's side of football continues to lag on this topic?
Oh, I think I guess it's just it's a very different dynamic in terms of, I don't want to throw around the word toxic masculinity or anything like that, but, it's certainly like, it's just got a long way to go in terms of being inclusive, and things like banter, homophobic banter is always around in the men's game, and it's hard to escape that, and it's just been something that's been going on for years and years, and it's really hard to reverse, I guess. So the more voices that we have, especially from straight allies, the better.
What advice would you give to anybody watching the Kiwi Football Fix right now? They're wondering how they broach the subject with their friends and family. They're gay, they're lesbian. They want to be honest with their friends and family. How should they go about doing it? And how do you provide them with the courage to do that?
I mean, I guess, it's a case by case and individual process. Like, however you feel comfortable enough, I guess just if you feel that you need to talk, come out to someone, just know in your mind it's never going to be as bad as you think, ever.
Did you hear
That's
that? It's never going to be as bad as you think, all right? So it's time to have a few conversations. All right, Hannah, listen, awesome to talk to you about that. It's wonderful. I mean, given it's Pride Month and all. Actually, before we move on to your love of music, Pride Month, it's great on one hand, but it's also like pigeonholing it. Why can't we celebrate all year round? And I remember a quote from Morgan Freeman. He was asked about Black History Month in America, and he's like, why do we just get a month? It's a start, Pride Month, but why can't it just be something we celebrate all year round? Do you get my drift?
Yeah, and obviously in an ideal world that would be the case. I think having it singled out to a single month is to just really have a strong focus on the diversity of human sexuality and gender identity, and kind of bringing to the surface all of those oppressed voices and those oppressed identities just for a straight month. And that's all the attention is on, that celebration. And obviously I would love for it to be all year round, but, there are dominant groups in society, and that's just kind of the way that things go. But I think, it's fantastic that we have a Pride Month, like we have a Black History Month. It's great.
Well, we'll keep continuing to knock down walls as we go, Hannah. Listen, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about your love of music, because it was your father who basically introduced you to the guitar, and you've blossomed since then. You play the guitar, you sing. I suppose during a global pandemic, it was pretty handy to have something like that to fall back on when you're just stuck in a room on your own. How did music help you get through a very difficult time?
Oh yeah, music has always been there to help me through everything. It was there when I got injured, injured both my knees, and yeah, it was such a fantastic escape during these really, really dark and boring times when it's pandemic. But it's always going to be there for me. Outside of football, I'll always use music as an outlet.
How far have you progressed with your, I suppose you can call it a musical career, because, you search your name on Spotify and you've got a page that comes up, you can listen to your tracks there. Have you been brave enough to venture out into a club or a cafe and play to a group of people who you don't know?
Yeah, I have. I've done it in Sweden a couple of times. In Portugal, I actually bought some live equipment that I haven't properly put to good use yet, because everything sort of shut down. I couldn't really go anywhere or do anything. And it's hard when I move so much, because I can't keep carrying all that stuff anyway, you know. So I think once I find somewhere more permanent, like that's certainly something I'll commit to.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the whole performance aspect of being a musician, because, you know, as a professional footballer, day after day, week after week, it's just a given. You take to the field, you perform in front of fans, they either love you or they hate you, and then you move on, and it's just the same week after week after week. But this is a completely different and a unique environment. You're up there, you're vulnerable, you're playing music for a crowd of people, and they may or may not like you. How does it differ?
I guess, I mean, it doesn't really, I guess. It's very similar because you have to find that zone or that flow to block out the eyes on you in order to really perform well. You know, it is very, very similar. I guess with football, you're more distracted. But with music, it's like, I don't know, there's more room for error sometimes. But you can also, like, really know that, you know how to cover up a mistake, or, like, you know, I don't know, it's very similar, actually. And I think that's why I do enjoy, I always wanted to go out and push myself a little more and play more in front of people to just get uncomfortable. And kind of transcend that,
right?
Like I would, you know, by like training and stuff.
I hope it's not that similar, because I can't imagine that you know before a gig you'd be rubbing liniment on your thighs and calf muscles before you get up on stage. That'd be just a little bit odd.
No, not similar. Like, I wouldn't say so literally so similar, but in terms of the mindset, it definitely is.
Awesome. Hannah, it's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you today on the Kiwi Football Fix. I wish you the very best in Germany. Hopefully Duisburg isn't as bad as Emma Rolston says it is, and you finally get out on the field once lockdown lifts and the weather lifts too. Thanks again for your time, Hannah Wilkinson.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We now head to Monaco United out in South Auckland, who, well, they're making a name for themselves as being one of the most diverse clubs in New Zealand in terms of ethnicities and cultures. I want to know why and how this has happened, so we welcome to the show Chairman of Monaco United, Hone Fowler. Hone, how and why has this occurred? Is this something that you've driven personally, or has it just happened by accident?
Oh, tēnā koe, Goran. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having us on the show. It's the development of Monaco United has really come about out of the need of our local community. So it's come from the grassroots. It's come out of community conversations around what is possible in terms of football, and using that as a vehicle to really just to bring people together and to celebrate each other through the game.
Do you actively pursue people from different cultures, or is it just that they know that you are inclusive of all races and cultures and they flock to you?
Well, I think if we start with our values, which really encompass things like manaakitanga and making a place a safe environment, no matter where you're from, you'll gravitate, I believe, to a place where you enjoy to be. So we're really lucky in South Auckland to have an extremely diverse community, so it makes it easy for us. We don't actively go out and to recruit people or communities. They actually come to us, and we do our best to try and adapt to support and include communities, individuals, families, and introduce the game of football sometimes, but also just to provide that space where people can enjoy the game of football, because as we both know, it's a universal game, and we've got a lot of new immigrants to the country living in South Auckland, and it's something that they might not speak English as such, but they can speak the game of football. It can touch and connect with so many communities around the world, and we're just lucky enough to be in a position to facilitate some of that.
Yeah. You know as well as I do that good news travels fast, and so when people have a good experience at Monaco United, they obviously tell their friends. How big has the club gotten really quickly? I'm assuming that numbers have grown exponentially.
Yeah, we have seen growth over the last few years. I feel the real, I guess, gold nugget, if you like, has been breaking down barriers with community groups and schools in particular too. So working with kura kaupapa, working with schools of other faiths, and with communities that, one in the mainstream New Zealand football might not see as a football community, and exposing the truths around, okay, well, for example, with Pacifica communities, it's, one of the most played sports throughout the Pacific Island nations. We've got the biggest Pacific Island population in South Auckland. It's matching up those opportunities to the realities that exist in, for example, in the islands, and bringing those opportunities and making them fit. So fit for purpose, getting more, young coaches and support staff in terms of from those communities at different levels throughout our organisation. There might be at governance, might be at senior staff, and support and putting those systems in place so that we can truly and genuinely reflect that diversity throughout. And if we can see that throughout the organisation, people are more likely to feel comfortable in turning up to training or getting involved in activities that we like to deliver and engage our community with.
Obviously, in South Auckland, Hannah, you've got that strong base of a lot of different cultures and ethnicities, and they will flock to the club. But I've seen in the past that you've managed to get footballers from Fiji over to play for your first team. But I'm thinking to myself, in a year like 2020, 2021, we're still battling with COVID-19. How likely is it that we'll see people come from the islands to play for Monaco United?
Yeah, there's been that demand there for some time, and the situation is what it is. It's unfortunate, obviously, with COVID. We've got to follow regulations and things like that. So we adapt to the situation in which we live. We have currently, about 40% of our population, that's across the whole of Auckland, that are born overseas. So we've got a very multicultural community as it is. And so we're just focused right now on providing opportunities for our local communities. And we like to look at supporting and linking with communities across the Pacific in particular, because as I said before, we've got a very prominent Pacifica community in South Auckland. And we've made contact and, maintain connections with a number of the Pacific Island nations. And when the borders or when circumstances change, we'll look to look at opportunities there to pathway from for example, Fiji or might be Tonga into South Auckland, and work with and support communities so that the young people really have a pathway to fulfil their potential.
Have you got any half Croatians on your books? Because I know this one guy, he hasn't kicked a ball in about 6 or 7 years. He's 40 years of age, about 95, 96 kilos. Could you find a home for someone like Goran Paladin?
Oh, well, I'm sure there's a home for him at our club. So you can bring your jandals along, Goran, and come on down to training next week.
Hannah Fowler, it's been a pleasure having a chat with you on the Kiwi Football Fix. Keep doing what you're doing and go well in 2021, mate.
Well, much appreciated, and all the best to you. Kia ora.
And just like that, another episode of the Kiwi Football Fix is over. Just a reminder before I dash that we've got ISPS Handa Men's Premiership action on Sunday at 4 o'clock. Sky Sports 7B in sports. It's Waitakere up against Hamilton Wanderers. And then before I return on the Kiwi Football Fix next week, the Wellington Phoenix play not once but twice on, Sunday at 6 p.m. They play the Central Coast Mariners, the high-flying Mariners. And then on Wednesday night at 9 p.m, they've got Melbourne Victory, both of those games on Sky Sports 7 as well. Until next week, have a great one, and we'll see you next time on the Kiwi Football Fix.